God, so much garbage just having to access so many things so deep in these other classes. It's just a lot of damned code. Object controller is get default object on here. So nothing too terribly interesting. Basically what we're trying to do is clone all the right objects, set everything up properly so that everything can work. And well, the issue that we're running into is a lot of things that are nice and easy to work with inside of the editor are not nice and easy to work with inside of actual C++ code. And normal classes and inheritance and all sorts of that doesn't really work too well. So I heard knocking on my window, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? There's something knocking on my basement window. So I go over and look, and it's a bird knocking on the window because there's a spider on the inside of the window, and it's trying to get the spider to eat it. It wasn't me. Yes, it's pretty funny to see that. I'm glad though the bird didn't like break the window or something. It's not a very sturdy window. It's like a tiny little basement window too. So I guess that's why it held together pretty well. So multiple things have knocked on that window at various times. None of them have ever been people knocking on that window. There's always been some animal. Like there was a cat one time knocking on the window. It's just it's just pretty funny. And it was like, a little sparrow. It wasn't an interesting bird. Just a regular bird. It was really going for it though. It was a hungry bird. I should just like go find the bird and feed it. Like, here you go. Here's the spider. He'll be like, oh hell yes. Alright, well, it seems like we've got our homunculus maybe working here, so we'll walk through it and see what it can do. And that's what I call things in code that are just abominations. I will refer to them as homunculuses, or as, as, and if it's something that does a whole bunch of random crap, I'll call it a transmugler, because of reasons. Alright, so we make our stuff, and this is actually a thing, so our proxy clone it's been created, and we should be overwriting okay, so proxy clone logic controller equals not equal null pointer. Override scale is false. We set our position properly. We set our proxy clone. We have no tags. We have a tag. It's scary. Okay, so let's take a look at our actor that we made. It's this little fat sack dude. Let's look at his tags. I don't see any tags on him. No tags on this guy. I'm pretty sure maybe... Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong tags. Yeah, here we go. This guy's got the scary tag on him. Awesome. So why did we make these like create entity with from entity with params and create entity from proxy with params? Like, why did we actually make these? Like, do we need them? Because this is like, okay, we've got like an entity that we want to clone, but we might as well. I mean, we're just setting our entity data, aren't we? Like, we should probably get rid of these two functions and just have our params here have an entity type or something like that. Because it's like with name here is just getting this thing. So the question is also, we pretty much want to do like if params requires clone, then we want to clone. So we want like to make it so we don't always have to clone something. And yeah, so we should definitely do that. So we're actually pretty close to being done with this. So it's basically if any of our overrides here are not null, then we do require a clone because we're potentially modifying stuff. So we call to check if we need to create a clone entity proxy for object instantiation. And the reason I call, like, we had a big complex thing. Like, this is actually kind of a funny story. On Dragon Age Legends, we had a combat system that ran, like, when we made the prototype combat system, it was all supposed to be on the client, and then, like, the game massively expanded in scope, and it went from a team of literally 2 people, me and, like, another developer, to a team of, like, 30 or 40 people over the course of about 10 months. And so the original combat system was written just client authoritative and, like, very much set in itself, and then we had to actually write like the server authoritative version of combat. So this combat system was basically already written on the client. It was written in such a way that it would never work on the server. So we wrote the server version, or I wrote the server version of the combat system, and then the guy had to go make the client side version actually work properly as well. And the two systems were so incompatible, and the guy didn't want to rewrite the client-side one. So there was like, we had to figure out a way to make the server authoritative version of the combat system sync up with the client-side version of the combat system. And they were completely incompatible on like a logical layer. On like, this red ball is like this red ball. We couldn't make them equal each other at all, like with any sort of, like, it was just complete, just wouldn't work. But I had this great idea. And the idea was, while they were not compatible on a logical level, like this red ball equals this red ball, they were compatible on a data level, on a just a serializable like data, like on a binary level. They were actually compatible on that level. Like this variable equals this variable, we could do that. So we actually wrote like a serializer. I called it the transmoogler because it basically like took this garbage and like made it into other garbage, and it was just complete shit. It was really funny because we had a stand up, and the guy was saying it's going to take 2 months for us to get this combat system hooked up, and I was like, I have an idea. What if we just do horrible thing, and we get it done this morning? And he's like, oh my god, that might work. Same thing with Ethan. Ethan's like, he was our producer. He's like, oh, yeah, sure, we'll get it done in one morning. So, and thus the transmoogler was born, and it was something that should not have existed. And I specifically called it the transmoogler because then people would ask, what the hell is this transmoogler? I was like, it's a transmoogler because it needs to have an awful name because it's an awful thing. And you're like, well, what does it do? It's like, it transmoogles things. It's like, no, but what does it do? I'll be like, it transmoogles things. Just, if you need to know what it does beyond it transmoogles things, then you need to make it not exist. So, of course, that code never left the project. Alright, so if params requires clone, then we're actually going to clone it. Alright, cool. So let's finish this thing off. We need to pass in the entity proxy pointer, which we've just made here. And sorry, I'm just kind of concentrating at the moment since I'm moving a whole bunch of stuff around. I'd rather not get it messed up. Alright, so we need another one of these, and it should be uEntity proxy and a Dashkin entity actor. And this should be prototype entity actor. But it was that Transmoogler was just one of those things that just, that's why we shipped that game. We shipped that game not because we should have shipped that game. We didn't ship that game because we were experienced. We didn't ship it because of a lot of reasons, but we did ship it because we just got the work done. And that was the thing, is like, we should not have done that. A more experienced coding team would not have done what we did. They would have probably avoided the whole situation, but we also probably would have gotten canceled because we wouldn't have gotten things done as quickly. Which is, I think, sometimes lost in a lot of coding. Alright. Which is another thing. I think a lot of hiring is biased towards getting a bunch of more experienced devs. But nothing beats getting a project out the door like a bunch of people who don't know what the hell they're doing. And are willing to make mistakes. What's the worst is when you have a bunch of people who do know what they're doing, but they're not willing to make mistakes. Because then you end up not shipping a damn thing. Because everybody's too busy making something correctly to actually finish a project. They're like, oh, I don't understand this, so I'm going to spend 2 million years understanding all the parts of it. And be like, well, you don't always need to understand everything to succeed. The inner perfectionist crash. Yeah. Because that was one of the things, like, I know in the wrap-up for her Dragon Age Legends, there was a lot of stuff like, we had a whole bunch of junior engineers, and that's why we had so many problems. But there's also kind of the feeling in my mind that it was because we were willing to... There was a lot of just, like, we wouldn't have shipped if we had more experienced devs. Because I don't think we would have been able to show enough progress fast enough to have avoided being canceled. And that's one of the other hidden things, is like maybe if we had a team of more experienced devs, we would have gotten it done faster overall, but I think we would have just gotten canned. This thing is bitching because I got rid of something. I got rid of this function. Yeah, if we had, yeah, it would have been more experienced people. Like, it was, God, it was a combination of things. It's hard to put your finger on it after a while. But, I don't know. I know if I went back, if I was hired to that project 8 years ago, we would have really done everything differently. And we probably could have shown the forward progress we did. And we probably would have shipped it in a quarter of the time. But, I don't know. It's one of those things where there were no experts back then for what we were doing. Because nobody had really done that before. Or at least a lot of people were doing the same thing all at once, which was make Facebook games. And we were trying to make a non-shit Facebook game in the terms of, something that had like real meat to it besides just, click on this to get more stars or something. Which not many Facebook games actually had any real substance. There were some that really went way down, like we're going to be a real game, like King's Road and others. But they came after, and so we had this wave of like Flash games that were not really real games. So there was a Wild West period there where people didn't really know how to make them. Which is pretty funny, is like by making it a better quote-unquote game, we actually made it a much worse Facebook game. Alright, so that was us creating FatSack with our custom parameters. Let's walk through it and make sure it actually did what we thought it should. So we've got our entity, and we didn't have to clone Did we have to clone? No, we didn't. So... Oh no. Is our override height true? Override position is true. Override... I think I did screw that up though. Alright, our override... Let's just ignore... Oh, Jesus Christ. Visual Studio, could you please stop being a complete pain in the ass? So we're almost there. Yeah, we hit the like build everything button because Visual Studio is being a pain in the ass and swapped. It actually swapped the UIs on me while I was clicking, which is just obnoxious. Which toolbar is this anyway? So one of the things we could do here is we could actually change his starting state then. Why does it do that? Because it does. There is no other explanation necessary. Because it does. So what we want to do is we want to set starting, it's like override logic state, and we want to set it to fat sack wander to start with. So we'll see if this works by just kind of doing like this. Yeah, it's one of those where like your modern IDEs will actually have a different perspective for debugging and for running. So if you saw that real quick, he started off running. Not idling. Let's actually make this a little bit less. Ah, it didn't actually work, did it? So why didn't it set the default state? Oh, that was just him sliding down the hill really fast. Alright, so it has to do with this in here. So it's new Dashkin logic state group. If you don't have a light, if you've got just a black box, I mean, if you have nothing on screen, I know you have to have like a light box in your level for lighting to work. Other than that, I'm kind of clueless about lighting. I haven't done anything with it. Just the only thing I know is if there are some magical objects you have to have in your scene, otherwise they like there's no lighting whatsoever. So it's more make sure to check in your level real quick, and I'll just double check what we've got with lighting on the level that I've got at the moment. And I know it's like you need a light source, and then like the light mass volume stuff, and then like an actual light, and it's like this light source thing. What is this? This box here. Yeah, this is like the light mass stuff. Like if you don't have these boxes or some crap like that, then like stuff doesn't work right. I really have no idea how they work though, so I'm not. It's about the object itself. All right, cool. I'm glad you solved your problem. It's yeah, it'd be like one of those unlit materials perhaps, and you need to like make it the actual lit material. All right. So I've got all these pointers I'm working with right now, and some of them are all sorts of screwed up, so I'm just having to clean it up. Get logic controller. That should be logic object. And we shouldn't be setting this, we should be setting the default state group here. Anyway, good luck with your lighting there. Yeah, the only thing is I know are make sure you build lighting and make sure your materials are lit and that those magical light mass volumes are actually there. Otherwise, lighting doesn't exist. Alright, so if the logic object is not null, then we're going to set the default group to this, and default group is going to be this here. Okay, so if the override state logic does not equal null pointer, if the logic object does not equal null pointer, and the default group does not equal null pointer, then what we're going to do is we're going to set the we're going to need to clone the default state group here. So what we're going to do is set, the default group. This is going to be null pointer. And we're going to want to set the default state group to a logic state group, which is going to be the logic object's going to own it. We are going to clone the default group, get class. We don't need a name, and this is our template object. So we're going to say the logic object default state group. Clone it. And set the default state to the override logic state. And we should be setting the logic state group is what we should be looking at. Here we should be setting the default state. I think that should be doing it. It should simplify how we're actually dealing with a few of these things and probably make it easier. But basically, it's a whole bunch of stuff here where we have to clone objects to do things, and that's a real pain in the ass. Can't just pass things on there. So let's make sure that that actually built properly, because we modified a header halfway through the build. And as a result, I think we modified the header before the CPP actually built for Entity Utils. But yeah, symbols are going to be screwed up. So we got to rebuild all that garbage. And are we going to finish linking? Are we going to do it? Are we going to link all the projects and objects together and have an actual executable that runs it on the computer? Is it going to work? Is it going to do what it's supposed to? Find out next time. I mean right now. The answer is of course yes. And we want to walk through our logic object getting instantiated. We want to make sure that our default state group is actually set properly. Yeah, exactly. I don't think a cliffhanger ever backfired more than... Alright, so logic object is not null. The default group is this FATSAC standard AI. Alright, so we're actually setting the default state group to a new object because we have to clone it. And then we're setting it to the override logic state, so wander should be the state. Okay, so he should start off wandering. He didn't start off doing jack shit, did he? FATSAC just doesn't want to wander. Alright, so the entity proxy, we have our logic controller. Our logic controller. Alright, let's see. Set Dashkin entity proxy. Alright, so we have the proxy, the logic object. So we're going to do post setup. Post setup, our logic object is going to clone the thing, and then we're going to call initialize. So for all of our state groups, we clone our state groups. Alright, so our default state group is alright, so we had a FATSAC standard AI group C. The problem is we're comparing pointers here, and since we actually cloned this group, we need to actually be comparing like the class type. So we're setting things properly, it's just our AI is not using the correct thing. It should be comparing the class. Yeah, we should have been getting a warn log there. If get class. I'll have to do the same thing inside of the logic state. No. Default state group should be fine. We need to do it inside of the logic state group. Alright, let's see if this does it. Fat sack on strike. That's okay. We just delete all the strikers. There is no mercy in this virtual world. There is only what I want. And that is destruction. So if any fat sacks are misbehaving, we just hit the stop button and that fat sack ceases to exist. So his opinion is worthless, as his existence is at my whim. It's hard to be on strike if you don't exist. Alright, so default state group is actually null. Wait, what? Yeah, because we overwrote it. So, okay, fine. This is not what we want. Okay, so our default state group